Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, my guest is One Emprima. She is a doctor of metaphysics, which I think is awesome. She researches the impact of emotions and traumas on the mind, body, and life. In 2016, she experienced a grand spiritual awakening during a difficult military deployment in the Middle East. Since then, she has used her personal experiences to help others heal trauma and expand their own spiritual gifts. Annie has also accepted a keynote speaker's position at my next summit, Finding Energy After Trauma. Annie, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Annie, when you think about, I like to ask people who sign up for the speaking slots on my summit or to be a keynote, what feels aligned to you about that with this particular energy topic?
So much of what we go through is based in trauma. So much of our struggle, so much of our discomfort, our suffering comes from trauma. And to realize that reunion, that there is a reunion at the end of the work, a reunion of mind, body, soul, that it's a reminder of who we were before the struggle, or who we were before the life walk. There's a miracle, there's a magic, there's a joy that comes in doing the work.
Absolutely. Now, I usually ask my guests, because it connects with my audience and even your audience. Most of my audience are complex trauma survivors. And so they do better when I have imperfect guests on the show that are willing to just share a little piece of their trauma story without going into grand detail, because we're not looking at your value as a survivor. We're looking at your value as someone who's an overcomer, who's not just surviving, but you're thriving and you're creating dreams and you're helping other people work on their dreams. So obviously that's the most important piece. But for that connection, is there a small piece of your trauma that you are feeling okay to share today?
I'll share what I just walked through. A couple weeks ago did something very shamanic, extremely shamanic. And in that shamanic journey, my soul, my internal intelligence had said, it's time to let go of the anger. And I had anger, I had rage. And in this shamanic journey, what came forward was that my 15-year allergy to wheat flour it brought me back to a traumatic moment of my third miscarriage, third of 6. And it said the moment when you chose to go to a military training in Utah instead of being with your husband because you felt safer among strangers to grieve your third loss, this is what caused the wheat flour allergy. And that opened me up to understanding how food allergies can be trauma-based. And then I've had wobbly ankles coming out of deployment. We were one of our trips from Kuwait into Iraq, our plane got shot at and we had to land in Baghdad instead of Taji. And when you're combat landing and you get on the flight line, the messages get off of this plane as fast as possible. We got to get the cargo out. We got to get the people out so that we're not seen. And so jumping that 18 inches, running with about 80 pounds of gear, 100 pounds of gear, I ruined my ankles. And for 9 years, the doctor said that wasn't going to be fixable. And I didn't realize that my unstable ankles, physical injury, was trauma-based. So there's a lot of things that I've had to uncover throughout my life, a lot of pieces that the message came, this is not for you to keep, this is for you to understand. When my friend died, like, strange hair, when my friend died in 2019, 6 weeks later, I was experiencing fibromyalgia, and that message came in, this is for you to understand, not for you to keep. And so I deeply understand trauma. I understand deep anger. I understand deep grief. I understand deep resentment. I understand deep shame. And I've had to walk through those things. So when I speak, I'm not speaking academically. I'm not speaking casually. I'm speaking from experience, pulling from my own journey.
Well, yes, and I think that's why I feel connected to you is it's when the people that come into our life have that personal connection, but also to trauma, but also that professional experience as a healer. It just helps us show up in such a different way for our clients. Like clients, in my experience, don't want to work with someone with just academic background. They want to feel seen and heard and feel like you get them. And with the things that we've been through, they feel like you get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a layer of compassion that comes in seeing somebody else experience something that's already in my library of experiences. I find that I'm more patient, I'm more compassionate, I can hold space in a grander way because I do have that memory of what it felt like to go through it.
Yeah. So I know that you have tapped into many different healing modalities on your healing journey, spiritually, energetically, mental health, emotional health. And we all know it's all connected.
Yeah.
What part of what you experienced as a trauma survivor, like when did you start noticing the connection between your struggles and traumas and with the work that you're doing now? Like, when did that moment happen to you? Was it a sudden thing? Was it ongoing transition?
I, 2019, when my friend passed, that was the first time I heard the voice say, your fibromyalgia is for you to understand, not for you to keep. That's everything before that was survival, just navigating life. But that was perhaps the first time I can remember hearing that voice say, once you understand what this is, once you connect it, it will release. And it did. So that changed my angle of observation on what it was that I was experiencing. That was the moment when I realized I needed to understand my path.
It was easier for you to see your purpose?
It was the birthing of my purpose. Up until then, I was an intuitive coach, but I wasn't doing what I'm doing now. I didn't understand, and I wasn't creating modalities like I am now. That was the moment of I needed to have honor both sides of my brain. I needed the duality to be activated, the one that needed the logical understanding of it, the science-based, psychology-based, neuroscience-based info, but also the hyper metaphysical side of who I am, that very deep astral version of me, for both sides to be honored and understanding the story. Because I had that feeling at the time, there will be a time when I need to go back and teach this. What I am experiencing right now, what I'm walking through right now, I need to walk back over the bridge so other people can cross it.
For this particular month that we're in, we're recording in the month of July. I have a dream club where I work on a different spiritual law each month. And so this month I'm working on the law of action.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks exactly about this. Taking our experience and teaching others how to navigate it in a more healthy way, in a more healed kind of way. So your discussion is reminding me of that law of action. Yeah. Okay, so I'm actually surprised you said 2019, but I get it. The way you described it, I get it more because I knew you had gifts before that. And I don't know if you're wanting to, and of course you can say no, but when we first met, you told me this story about the young service member that you interacted with when you had your grand spiritual awakening. I'm wondering if you're open to telling a little bit about that story today, because I think it's very touching.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like perhaps the first chapter in my story was about 4 days after landing in Kuwait. It takes a couple days. So the first couple days you don't have to report to duty because you're acclimating to the time change. It's an 11 to 12 hour difference. So about the fourth day, my first day of duty, when I'm supposed to go meet my counterpart that I'm replacing, I felt this energy hit my skin. I can't explain it. And if we had more time, I'd go into the layers of all of the thoughts that came through my mind because I didn't understand option E, that one option that isn't A, B, C, or D, but you got to fill in the blank. I had no concept to even label it. But all of my clairs just opened. I'm feeling things. I'm feeling these big hands touching me. I'm feeling things on my skin, my hearing, my knowing, my awareness just cranked open with no instruction manual. So I'm navigating a deployment while also navigating this spiritual awakening. And one day I walk into the chow hall, as we did, Zone 6, Camp Arif John. And in this chow hall, the way it's designed, it would be, you get your food, you come in, you get your food, and it's served to you on trays. And then you have a tray and you navigate to a point where you have to choose, do you want to sit on the right side or the left side of the chow hall? Because there's a hard divider down the middle holding up the building. And there's a left and a right side for each side. So you can go down the aisle of the left side and you choose tables on either side and so on the right. My friends were on the right. And we almost always sat on the right in the back. And this time I felt these giant hands as if I were a 4-year-old and I had big bare hands on my shoulders. And it turned me. I can't explain it. I still to this day don't know what it was, but these hands moved my body. And I'm sitting there in my early 40s, deployed, food in my tray, talking to voices in my head as I'm walking down a military chow hall. So the conversations in my head, I have no idea what my facial expressions were, but I kept getting this push of keep going. And then it disappeared. Okay, conversation in my head, what happens next? Where do I go? There's a service member on the right side just sitting by himself. So I'm thinking I'm awkward Annie, like the weirdo crazy Annie, just plopping in front of this individual who's probably 20 years my junior. And I'm talking and I'm thinking nothing like I'm thinking in my own head, he must think I'm really crazy. I'm the weirdo that just plopped in front of him. I wasn't invited. And so I'm focused all on me, not on the prompting, not on the appreciation of the event. Fast forward, that happened a couple times, maybe a couple more. Fast forward, I'm walking into a restaurant and he saw me and he got up and he's Sergeant Emprima, and he gave me this huge, I'm so glad to see you hug. And it caught me off guard because I didn't think we had from my perspective, we had no deep connection. We never had deep philosophical conversations. It was very superficial. So
That one time.
That right. These very like incidental moments in my story, but that hug said otherwise. And it occurred to me in that moment, there was something more in play that I was not privy to. That prompting, without making assumptions, that prompting meant something much greater to him than it did to me. And that was when I started paying attention to the promptings of when I feel pulled or pushed or designed, so to speak, to go in a direction. I've stopped judging it, and I just have a relationship with it.
Yeah. Because I think when we connected about this, it's like, it just sometimes takes that one person, that one connection that can prevent us from doing things like suicide, right? So it can be much more meaningful than the surface shows sometimes.
And that was one of those moments. Another individual had said after the deployment, had you not been there, had you not constantly been, I forget his exact word, but he said, if I had my service weapon and you weren't there, I wouldn't be here. And that was the third interaction from my deployment of individuals. And again, the whole time I'm interacting with him, I'm thinking I'm the weirdo that doesn't want to eat by myself. And I'm judging myself, not realizing the impact that the other person was having, how it was impacting them. It was answering the prayer that they had, or fulfilling some need that existed without my awareness.
Yeah, the subconscious on both of you, really.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a powerful, your discussion and your work around service members. Because you weren't hired as a military therapist. You weren't hired as the military chaplain,
No,
you know?
I wouldn't even
And
go
look
to
how you
them.
showed up for people.
Yeah, looking back on that deployment, our brigade as a whole, we were not in the combat zone. There were some of us that were going in and out of the combat zone. But the amount of trauma that occurred was because of unhealthy dynamics in the unit. So there's a lot of loneliness. There was a lot of isolation. There was a lot of suicidal ideation. There was a lot of low morale. And I got to be the participant and the observer in those moments.
Yeah, you were meant to be there, even though it probably sucked a few times. Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you more. Like, I know these experiences shaped who you are now and the work that you're doing. Can you share a little bit about your journey with clients now? Like, do you work with people one-on-one? Do you do groups? Are you teaching courses? Like, show us a little bit about what you do now.
So what I do now is definitely one-on-one. That's what I'm known for. People all around the world. I think I have 14 countries represented over 3 years. One-on-one sessions. Most of them will find me on social media. They get to watch me do demos. They get to see, because the language that I'm introducing is fairly new for most people. I'm saying things that are a little bit beyond a casual conversation. And so it's easier for me to show people than it is to tell. And so a lot of people follow me on social media and watch to see if it's safe. Is this safe? Because I'm talking about things, language of shadows, and very often that gets interpreted as demons in sort of Hollywood religious beliefs. But what we're really looking at is compounded anger, compounded shame that sort of manifests energetically as these dark, scary things that are really wanting to be seen. And so people will watch me on social media, and then they will sign up for a discovery session, and then they'll work one-on-one with me. And from that point, all of my clients have to have completed the first 6 sessions, because I need to establish the foundation in the language so that they can go play in their bigger sandbox. And then they can be a part of energy groups and work as cohorts that meet weekly and do practice their clairs as a group to develop the clairs in a group setting. Or I'll have classes offered for different topics. Sometimes it's, let's understand how emotions become diseases. And so that'll be offered, and it's all available on my website. There's different things that change out seasonally based on current events or things that I'm going through. So if I go through something and I'm really excited to teach it, I will offer the class to be able to teach what I just learned.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember now when we first met, you told me like you were doing demos on TikTok, and I thought she's pretty badass. That's so cool. Because I guess you're reaching many people of different ages this way, or do you have a certain age range that gravitates towards you?
The my desire is 27 above to have the developed prefrontal cortex. When the frontal cortex is more developed, I'm less likely to have someone automatically assume something is more than it is and create a narrative. So I find very politely that the undeveloped brain is a little bit harder for me to work with. So 27 and higher, my average audience is about 45, 50 to about 60. And they find me on TikTok. They do find me on TikTok.
I love that because a lot of social media experts will say that TikTok is not where that audience would be. So you've proven them wrong.
I 3.5 years later, I am still 90 to 95% TikTok as my source of clients. Because it's
That's
a
wild.
show. I can show people what I do, and people can sit quietly, anonymously, and observe and watch other people's reactions and then ask questions as an audience member without having to be seen quite yet. So people get to walk into the pool very slowly and acclimate in very slowly before I'm working with them on the diving board, so to speak.
Yeah. They can tiptoe in
Yeah, they can
the
tiptoe.
shallow water and observe and until they feel safe.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what happens. It might be 3 months, 6 months. I have clients that have watched me for a year, and then they'll come forward and say, I'm ready. I feel comfortable now. And that's where the work begins.
That is really beautiful. I feel like I use the word beautiful too much. I'm gonna have to come up with something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Precious seems like a little hokey, but it feels precious to me too.
It's honoring the internal flow. And I don't think we talk about that enough. The cycle of preparedness, or the space that comes before the work starts, to cultivate the safety first to step into the arena.
Huge.
Yeah.
Especially for our audience of survivors. Like most survivors, despite even doing a little bit of healing, often are dysregulated. It takes a lot of healing, a lot of work. Well, I've been a trauma recovery expert for more than 25 years. I've had lots of different therapy and coaching and lots of different healing, energy healing. And there's still times I get pretty dysregulated. It's a process. So safety is something we don't take for granted. We don't feel safe everywhere.
I step into someone's body. I'm feeling what they're feeling, and that can be incredibly vulnerable. It's freeing, but it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so it's yeah, to have someone witness your own breath, and that's what you've been able to provide. For someone to witness their own breath is validation. And that once you have that validation, you can't go back to who you were. And so it's like stepping up to that ceremonial bridge. And once you cross it, that old version, there's a grief that goes with the old version. And so, yeah. But it's beautiful. The journey is beautiful. I tell my clients in my agreement, the last paragraph is, this is a 10-year journey. And I don't mean it literally 10 years, like to the date. It's to put people in the mindset that there's no magic wand, and by Monday morning at 9 a.m., all things will have been like, poof, it's all gone. We're shedding and understanding and growing and learning. And that shedding takes time. So where someone is and where they're going to be, the journey in the middle is beautiful, even if it's messy and like growly, and it's still beautiful.
Say more about that. Like, I know what you mean by that, but for the person who's like, huh? What is she talking about? Say a little more about what you mean.
So I've carried anger through my whole life. for very valid reasons. I can list the 7,000 reasons. But in this shamanic journey that I did recently, which is my higher intelligence said, you need to go do this. And so I trusted that, followed it. And at midway point through this day, my ribs started hurting. They were hurting. And my sternum, my chest was hurting. And I'm getting growly, like the hunched back, and my elbows are going out, my fingers are getting clawy. And like from an outside, someone could judge it and say that was like possession or like an exorcism thing. But I was pulling forward all this anger, and it was pulling out of my ribs. And in this like pulling, it felt awful, like hurting, aching, pain. And I'm pulling, and it's just coming forward in a way that almost like someone had a rope inside of me, and they were pulling that rope out of me. And I was feeling like when people, if they've ever had stitches pulled out, that like weird, right? And it felt like this, like pulling out of my ribs, pulling out of my intercostal muscles. And I, at the end, took this deep breath of, I can breathe again. I can breathe. And I felt the traumas of my mother, the traumas of my grandmother, the traumas of my father's mother, my great grandmother, these women that didn't have a voice, that I had absorbed as a fetus, as my bones were being structured. I'm absorbing mom's pain. My 17-year-old mother, who doesn't speak English, is brought to this country. My dad married a woman from Lebanon, brings her to this country. She doesn't speak the language. She has no friends. She's 17. So all of those fears, all of that resentment of not having autonomy, not having sovereignty over her own body, that her parents said, you're going to go get married. So all of that came out of me. And in that release, the journey was like my whole life carrying this anger, not in this backpack of anger. In that release, that was the moment when I realized I wasn't just releasing for me, I was releasing epigenetically for everyone that came before me.
Yeah.
And that exhale of after letting this all go, that breath, it was like breathing for the first time. This full lung, the anger wasn't pulling on my ribcage anymore, and I got to breathe. And then my ancestors came forward and thanked me. Thank you for letting go. Thank you for doing what we couldn't do. Thank you for honoring us. And that was that one little moment at the end of this huge journey, that one little like spoonful of sweet ice cream, or this like sweet dessert that comes of all of this meant something. Through the journey of being angry, I couldn't see it being beautiful. It wasn't until I got to the end and I could look back and say, wow, like how beautiful this all was, and how sweet it is at the end. That it's really hard when you're in the muck of it. It's like, this is not beautiful.
No, I'm glad you're saying that, because people aren't going to understand otherwise. Like, it's almost like you're sadistic or masochistic if you think that I'm in pain. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's a beautiful journey. You're gonna grow and learn so much. It's so much easier to be on the other side of it, to then look back and like, oh, there was some beauty in that. I can imagine even just your breath alone must feel different with releasing so much.
Yeah. And I then understood in that moment how powerful trauma is on the body, how much it weighs in the mind, how much it weighs in the body. And it's this invisible weight. We can't measure it. There's no radiology test. There's no lab work that can be done. And yet we're carrying.
No, it's heavy. We just know it's heavy and oppressive.
Yes. Until it's gone. We don't realize how much we're carrying until it's lifted. And then we realize that's when we see the weight. That's when we see the weight of what we've carried, and how proud we should be that we've gotten this far. And that was something that I also was missing, of seeing my courage in the journey, seeing that survivor piece of, look what I did. It didn't break me. Look what I got to. I don't want to say it and have it misunderstood for those that are just starting their journey, because the start of my journey was awful and I have a lot of bad words for it. I am not going to decrease the value of intensity. But looking back now, I have a better understanding, appreciation, and gratitude for how strong I had to be to get this far. How strong. And that couldn't be measured in the middle of it. We need the contrast of letting it go to measure that distance.
Yeah, that was really well said. Because I think we can just your bio of serving in the armed forces and being a trauma survivor even before that and during that and after that, we already know you're pretty tough, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to actually witness it and experience it and see the value that comes from that once we do some healing work for sure.
Yeah.
What is next for you? Like what's next in your personal or professional journey?
I'm always evolving. I only use my modalities on my clients, but understanding other people's modalities to be able to have the wisdom of what else is out there. And so one of my interests now that have been added to my interest list is understanding the impact of inherited traumas on the physical bones, how our bones become bird cages or prison bars, and how our ribs store trauma, the ribs. And if that rib is storing trauma, it's bouncing against the organ on the other side. And so when we see people who are losing their gallbladders or their thyroid, I want to look at the clavicle. I want to look at the ribs. I want to look at the spine as storage and what's in that storage container. So my focus in probably the next year is diving into the depth of trauma that we inherit in utero, or even as our mother was a fetus developing the eggs that fertilized us, our mothers and our grandmothers went through, and how we are still carrying that baggage. So and then another interest of mine right now is looking at neurodivergency and ADHD, and can we take neurodivergent brains and utilize them in a higher dimensional, faster paced space to run the sugar out of the toddler before dinner time, take them to the playground if they had ice cream to burn off the sugar. Can I burn off the speed of ADHD in a fifth dimensional or sixth dimensional space of energy to then navigate 3D without the neurodivergent symptoms? So ADHD is also one of my interests in the next year.
Okay. Well, that sounds fascinating, but your first deep dive is way up my alley, and you were not going to run out of work researching that, because I'm doing a lot of research right now on the impact of trauma, regardless of what type of trauma, on the physical body. And I'm doing a summer series right now teaching it, and I can't even keep up with the research. It's so fascinating. From the top of your head to the tip of your toes, everything and anything in our bodies is impacted by the trauma that we go through. And the science is just scratching the surface of it. I just recently discovered that post-traumatic stress survivors at a higher risk for blood clots.
Yes.
Trauma
in the blood.
Yes, it was like a 66% increase over the general population. And I mean, when I think about it, it makes sense, right? When we think about these things, it makes sense. But connecting that and knowing that, my grandmother was a trauma survivor. She died from a blood clot to the lung. My mother was a complex trauma survivor. When she died, she had multiple blood clots throughout her body, mostly her legs. And so when I had surgery in May, I was like, one of the things the surgeon says is, well, you're not at risk of blood clots, so we don't need to do that. I'm like, how do you know I'm not at risk for blood clots? He goes, well, it's not in your record. I go, well, no one's asked me my family history on this. I go, that is one of my worries. I'm so scared about blood clots. He's like, really? And I shared with him my grandma and my mom. And so they did treatment in the hospital and they sent me home with 10 days of injections. And then, I mean, the injections were painful. They were really long needles, but I felt safer just taking them. So, yeah.
That's a conversation that I wish the medical community as a whole could grasp, is that we can have a symptom in a hand that has nothing to do with the hand. It just migrated up from an injury that's sitting in our cervical spine. We can have PTSD and have a bulging disc in C5. We can have the understanding how trauma travels in the body. Instead of fixating on the organ, let's find the root cause. Let's go back. Instead of looking at where the sprout is, we need to go find out where the root is. We have to travel it back, because the story is fascinating. Who would wheat flour? That wheat flour had to do with complex grief. To me, but then when I think back, every time I got pregnant, I would crave ramen noodles. So my body associated the ramen noodles to pregnancy that was painful and hurt and hard for me to digest. So it then said, okay, no, you will never have ramen noodles again. And 15 years later, I finally uncover like this connection between ramen noodles and a miscarriage. But that takes time.
It's so crazy.
Right? So we really have to be looking at it from a mind, body, soul perspective, or we're missing the whole story. We're getting teasers on what the story is instead of taking the time to read the chapters.
Since I was a teenager, probably a little bit before that, I was allergic to cats. And it was weird because I had a cat growing up. It's really weird. And then when I started working with my energy healers last year, and we did what's called core talk, using the pendulum to talk to my inner wisdom, my body. It turned out my allergies started because my father would drown kittens. When our cat had kittens, he drowned them all. And it was devastating for me in my young development. Absolutely devastating. I couldn't understand, like, why couldn't we, like, I understood we were poor. I understood we couldn't afford taking care of animals, but I just felt like there had to be other solutions, right? And so my energies healers helped me see that my body developed this allergy so I would not have a cat and have that experience, that trauma again. My body was protecting myself from a future trauma. So fascinating.
Really. And that's where the beauty, coming back to the word beautiful, is when we understand the story. It's like reading this great story and you get to the last chapter and you're crying. You're like, oh, this is a fantastic book. The chapters in the middle sometimes are hard to read.
Sometimes. A lot of times.
A lot of the times, yeah. Like, woo.
There's one more thing about your work that I wanted to call attention before we wrap up. I remember in our last conversation, and I also was on your website, so it's a little foggy now because it was a while ago. But I feel like you do some really interesting social justice, cultural stuff too with your work. Do you know what I'm talking about? Could you say a little more about that work you do?
My energy groups.
Yeah.
So
I want to hear more about that.
Once they have the foundation, they've gone through the training, they get used to the language. So let's go to the Black room, let's go to the campus, because this is all my lexicon. The energy groups focus on different topics. So my Tuesday night group, they astral travel to ancient areas, sacred spaces. So we've spent a lot of time in Turkey looking at the libraries and the temples. And now we're working in Italy, in Sicily, the area of Sicily right now, in the Vatican, and these ancient sites and what's really hiding there. So we'll travel in an astral space to visit that area and speak to the land, speak to the buildings, speak to the knowledge and the wisdom that's holding there. My Sunday group, they're focused on social injustices in the United States from 1830 forward. So the Trail of Tears, racial injustice, and how that has impacted the land, the atmosphere, and the animals and trees. So how does some how does a massacre cause an imbalance in the ecosystem? And so those groups are using their skills, developing their skills, training as a team, and we have missions that are very empowering or healing. And then I have my Monday group, which is just galactic. They're going outside of the solar system and doing work in a higher dimensional space to understand the balance, the ecosystem of our solar system and the other extraterrestrial entities that may exist that can share wisdom with us to understand our role here as humanity. Skill levels, different skill levels.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by all that, especially the social justice pieces of it and history.
Yeah.
I love that. You're doing such cool work. I don't know. Have you met any other people that are doing work like you do?
No, not the way I'm doing it. No.
I didn't think so, but I thought I would ask.
Yeah.
So Annie, I think this has been a very rich episode. I am so appreciative of the time for you to talk with my audience today. I am appreciative that you're going to be such a valuable speaker at my summit on finding energy. I'm very blessed to know you, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful connection, beautiful thought connection.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.